Congressman Biggs, thank you for joining. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me here. Thank you very much.
10 years in the Arizona Senate and House, 14 years.
14 years, yeah.
10 years in Congress.
Yeah.
You champion bills to eliminate mask mandates, eliminate COVID vaccine requirements, to get transparency to release COVID vaccine data, right? And which I'm sure didn't make you popular amongst the pharma lobbyists there. And now you're running for governor of Arizona.
Yes.
So I'm excited about that, and I'm excited to have you on to talk about that.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here. I mean, I've read your book. I've heard you speak publicly several times, and you're a champion. And I didn't realize that you represented some of my colleagues when Nancy Pelosi was getting quite authoritarian during the COVID issue. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah, well, it was a funny phone call actually, because local attorney in Kentucky who represents one of the members of Congress was contacted because Nancy Pelosi had fined them for not wearing a mask. And so, it was a fun lawsuit because the Constitution says you shouldn't reduce the salary of members of Congress while they're in office. And what Nancy wanted to do is basically you reduce the salary by taking fines out of their salary. And so, in any event, the court basically found that you can't enforce that provision of the Constitution, which renders it a nullity, unfortunately. But unfortunately, like so many other parts of our Constitution, our courts have found that, that's just there. They're just words, but they don't really have effect in the real world, as you probably appreciate. But luckily, that's why, it's nice to have the Constitution, but who you elect is so important because they pass the laws. The governor then gets to choose to veto them and also gets to act as the bully pulpit. And so if you want to protect your rights, the Constitution's there, but you got to have the right people in office.
Agreed, 100%. I find it unfortunate that the way the Constitution is talked is by case law instead of what do these words actually mean? What was the intention here? And how would they really apply? So we get a lot of case law. Sometimes you get bad cases that you're having to fight against. And ultimately, the judiciary has become kind of a supreme lawmaker. And the reality is the founders said should be the legislature because they're closest to the people, then the executive. But the judiciary should be the weakest branch. I mean, that's what Madison said. But they're not so much. So that means that's at the federal level. That means that at the state level, you better have a pretty good governor, pretty good leadership in this state to actually kind of push back where necessary on the feds.
Absolutely. I'll take it a step further. Article 1 of the Constitution created the legislature. It's supposed to be the most powerful. It's supposed to pass the laws.
Right?
But,
Exactly.
as you know, that's not where most laws come from.
That's right.
They come from the executive branch.
That's right.
You all in Congress pass, 200 laws a year on average versus the thousands of federal regulations that come out every single year. But, that's an issue at the federal level that you'll hopefully be leaving soon behind and coming and hopefully be the governor of the state. On the issue of medical liberty and so many of these bills you worked on at the federal level,
right?
Really, those are state issues. Because even at the federal level, when you were trying to pass those bills, those would have banned, for example, mandates of COVID vaccines at the federal level. They would have banned masks at the federal level. Because typically health policy is left to the states and should be. Right? And so if we're going to protect medical liberty in Arizona, it's going to happen at the state level.
Correct. Our problem was the COVID stuff turned the world upside down, right? So that rules were coming out from the federal bureaucracy to actually mandate, say, masks on public transit or whatever. You can't ride a plane, can't get on a plane unless you have face covering, right? Those types of things. And so my position at that was, because normally I'd say, this is truly just a federalist issue. The state's going to do this. But the feds had gotten into every aspect of your life. And so I felt like, we got to fight back on that.
Well, Congressman, do you remember there was a lawsuit that challenged the mask mandates on planes? Do you remember there was that lawsuit?
I do.
Brought in Kentucky.
Yeah.
You were one of the plaintiffs in that lawsuit, right?
That's correct.
Do you know who your lawyers were?
Was it you?
That's right. I was your attorney, Congressman. Now there were 17 members of Congress on that.
Right. Yeah.
And we dealt with two of the Senator Rand Paul's office, then we dealt with Congressman Thomas Massey's office on the House side. And so, and obviously you got a lot going on. So you're not going to always know every lawyer who's representing you in every case. But actually, that was our firm, along with co-counsel Chris Wiest, that brought that case. We brought it, and we were close to getting a decision. Then a Florida federal judge struck it down. Went up to the 10th Circuit, and then we, on behalf of you and 16 other members of Congress, went and intervened.
We did an amicus, right?
We did an amicus into that, and some other work as well.
It was well written, Aaron.
Well, I appreciate that.
Because I did read it, and I mean, when Thomas asked, "Do you want to get on this?" I'm like, "Let me read it." And I look, and I said, "Yeah, absolutely, we got to get on this thing."
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's a great example of federal government overreach. So
that's so funny.
Yeah, I mean that is, but and what's amazing about it is that if you want to wear a mask on a plane, go ahead and wear it.
People do now.
Right? People still do. People still wear it. Going through airports, I mean, you fly around all the time.
Oh my gosh.
I fly around all the time for work, and it's amazing to me how many people still wear a mask in airports or in airplanes. It's just
so,
and I support their right to do it.
Absolutely, they
support
can do
their
it.
Right to do it.
Yeah, I don't care. I just do find it interesting because I mean it's still as incongruous or inconsistent is a better word. Still as inconsistent today as it was during COVID. I mean. So the other day, I'm flying back and sitting kitty corner to me, there's a young lady. She's got a mask on. Okay, that's great. She conks out because we're on a long cross-country flight. I fall asleep. I wake up. She's got chips or whatever, and the mask is down.
Right.
And it never goes back up for the rest of the trip. And I'm like, why?
I think it's a form of virtue signaling in a way.
So? Yeah.
Or maybe that's the wrong word for it. It's a way to... it's a way for some. I don't think it's true for everybody. There's some people who wear masks for other reasons, but maybe for some folks, it's a way. See, I'm a good person. I care, right? Because that's what they were told. They were told, look, if you care about other people, you'll wear a mask. Of course, what's that?
And stand in a hula hoop. Don't get too close.
Yeah. I think, by the way, and somebody can check this later, but I think there's never been a documented case of COVID being transmitted on an airplane. And if I recall correctly,
I think that's right.
I could be checked. Somebody should check this because maybe there has been. I might even recall, because it's been a long time now, that there were CEOs of airlines were bragging about that at the time to try to get airplane and air travel back online because of they bragged about the air filtration systems on the plane, how robust they are.
Cleanest air in the world.
In the world,
they would
right?
say. Cleanest
and
air.
So, but yeah, that is, and it would be an interesting experiment, right? Like if I was somebody in the corner of this room was smoking a cigarette, and smoke particles are bigger than COVID.
Yeah, that's
virus, right? Put aside spitulence, like right in the area. If you wear a mask, you're still going to smell that smoke. I mean, unless you're wearing like a super which nobody wore. So if that's still being transmitted, but I wonder if on a plane, if you smoked and you would smell it. Like if somebody smoked 3 rows behind you, I don't know.
Oh yeah, you would.
Would you?
Oh, see, I'm older than you, so I grew up in the era where people smoked on the planes, and yeah, you can smell.
It still travels.
It travels.
All right. Well, then maybe COVID travels in ways that's hard to. Well, it'll be interesting to. Well, for whatever reason, apparently they've never documented a case. But the important point is that there should be the freedom to choose, and unfortunately, these policies, like you talk about with the hula hoop and the random 6 feet, and you got to wear masks, ended up undermining their authority because a lot of people saw through it. And they're like, so if I can't trust you on this, now I'm not going to trust you on something that maybe we do want the public to really trust public health authorities about.
Right. And And as we've seen with like Dr. Fauci, he had conflicts of interest, which kind of drove policy making, and that's a problem for us. I mean, and when you have the bureaucracy not dealing in good faith. I mean, because all the trust is undermined, and what Fauci did is just finish off as this is coming out now. This notion of gain of function research. What the heck were you doing gain of function research? That was not supposed to be happening. And yet not only was he moved it to China because it wasn't supposed to be happening, but he used U.S. dollars to help fund it. Now, what was his gain? I mean, that's the issue. But I mean, we all question this now. That's the birth of the Maha movement, really, in a widespread way. Is people said we just can't trust the government anymore. I mean, for years they were telling you whatever their food pyramid was, and that wasn't so great. I mean, you could fit Pop-Tarts very neatly into that. And maybe I shouldn't say that. There's probably probably
you don't mean
trademark.
that. You mean that in the non-branded form.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You
right.
mean that in the generically in the way that
toaster pastries.
Ketchup is used generically.
Exactly.
Toaster pastries.
But I mean, that would have fit very neatly in a very healthful diet according to the old food pyramid.
Yeah.
And so I mean, we all look at it and say, now we know that's not so hot. We know some of these pastries that are mass produced and distributed. Maybe they're not the best for you, and yet you could have fit them right in that old food pyramid. Which there were times in my life that I tried to fit them in there.
I think a lot of people understand that how much corporate influences those government recommendations, and that they really need to be wise, educated consumers, caveat emptor, really make their own decisions and not just rely on what the government tells them. But let me ask you this: why do you think Fauci wasn't indicted by the DOJ? By the way, given the documentation we now have vis-a-vis what he did to try and push the natural origin story versus the lab leak story and the suppression of one versus the other, which there's a pretty robust record at this point on.
I can't even speculate why he wasn't investigated criminally and at least brought before a grand jury.
Do you know he wasn't investigated?
It's hard for me to believe that he was.
Okay.
Based on because
that normally wouldn't be public information.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't be public. But I mean, you can
unless you're a member of Congress, maybe, and we're in the skiff or something. I don't know.
No, I was never got a classified briefing on that. But okay. I will tell you that it's hard for me to believe that, because at least the public record and comments that he made were consistent with something that should have gone before a grand jury and let the grand jury decide if there was should be a criminal charge brought forward. And I don't think there ever was, and I may be wrong on that, but I have asked and snooped around a little bit, and I've never seen any evidence that happened.
I'm not a big proponent of one administration going after former administrations. I think that there should be a very high bar. Otherwise, we end up in a banana republic.
Yes,
where each turn administration just ends up indicting the old ones. It's not good for our democracy.
Right.
With that, so I'm not saying I'm encouraging or proposing or supporting it anyway. Given the politics of the day, and given that has been happening on both sides recently, over the last, let's call it 8-12 years, I would think that this administration right now, that would have been something they would have been more inclined to do. So whether I agree with it or not.
Well, I do know that this has been an inherent problem going back. I mean, there's been books and studies done on this for decades, actually, that you come in, let's say you're Trump, and you appoint Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, whatever, in that apparatus. Well, they're going to bring in their people, but you have multiple layers of bureaucratic animals that are static and have no need. they know they can outweight anybody up here, right? So let's say they don't like it, or let's say there's just too much work, or for whatever rationale they may have, they don't move. It's so just the top one or two layers that come in, they're trying to get stuff done, and they might be able to get a little bit done. But I've heard complaints from both sides of the aisle on this, that they can't, it's stasis. It's just kind of stasis, it's bureaucratic stasis. And neither side has got, in my opinion, the political will to go in and kind of basically clean it out and say, we're going to have to get rid of the underbrush and basically start this agency over again. But that may be what you need to do if you're going to get what I would call true justice in this country, one way or the other.
I mean, what you're saying is the careers at these agencies need to be moved out. You said you were at the Kennedy Center. You heard me advocate for that in certain agencies.
Yes.
That those who have set policies for decades that are problematic, how can you ask them to correct course now? They'd have to basically point the gun at themselves. Folks
Correct.
don't typically do that.
Right.
Is that what they call it? Often people refer to as the deep state, right? They're really just talking to me, in my mind, about just the careers who have this inertia going on. And in fact, the less they do, the safer their job is.
That's exactly right. No, that's exactly right.
And I've seen this in practice. So, we have done over 2,000 FOIA requests to federal agencies, probably a lot more than that, but at least 2,000. We've sued on. We've got over 100 lawsuits right now, right? So we sue on a lot of them because they don't typically want to give you what you asked for. Any event, what I can tell you we often find out of the millions and millions of pages is that when, at least in the health agencies in particular, I can't speak to all the agencies, but for example, when the CDC finally has to do something, what do? The careers don't do it often. They hire outside consultants.
Sure.
So you got over 65,000 people in HHS, careers, 65,000 of them. But when they finally need to get something done, they go and outsource it. So the 10,000 people at CDC, not enough. You need a report on doing a VSD study. You don't have, out of your 10,000 people, you can't do that. You got to go and pay your VAERS data. You can't review it yourself. You have to outsource that. I mean, it's always outsourced third party because then the career is safe. They can't mess it up. They can't get in trouble.
Right. I think that's exactly right. I think that happens all over the place. I mean, tangentially, but also related is the movement of money to NGOs, which also do this contract work, right? So we see that in virtually every agency. So they're moving money over here. That NGO is going to actually do something and then give it back maybe to the agency. The other explanation, and I agree with that explanation, what you're talking about, because it actually corroborates something called path-dependent theory or increasing returns, which is this theory that no matter what direction you're going, if it's the earliest direction and even if it's the less optimal, the most suboptimal direction, you'll continue on, because as you're going, at first you might get a little positive feedback, but it doesn't matter because you're going to build regimes, rules, institutions to reinforce the decision you've made. And that's really kind of what happens with the careerists, as you're calling them. They are the institution. They are the regime, and they create the rules that actually reinforce themselves to stay there. And so it makes perfect sense to me. It's a rational decision to say, okay, if I make this decision, who knows where I'll end up? I might be exiting my path. And so what they want to do is they want to get somebody else over here who can come in short term. But what's weird about it is I would bet you that these consultancies that they hire, they get hired over and over again as well.
Yeah, and they're probably a lot of times are former
totally.
So it's a nice circle that they have.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people look at Bobby and they give him, he gets a lot of, he gets people. Some people are not happy with how progress is made in certain ways, but they also don't appreciate that HHS as a department, right? He's the secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, in which CDC, FDA, NIH, all the agencies are located, has, we just said, over 65,000 careers. It's fluctuating. They removed a lot of them. The courts make put them back, right? So
Exactly.
something like that. And then there's 200 political appointees. Many of those positions not even filled, right? And Bobby doesn't even get to pick those. The Presidential Personnel Office picks those. The White House picks those.
That's right.
So Bobby's basically got Bobby. Then he's got 65,000 plus careers who are all fighting him. He's got political appointees. He can't, at the end of the day, choose himself, really. He's got the White House making the picks, and they're not often picking the folks he picks. He would like, I think, at least from from where I'm looking. And then he's got the White House above him. And that's the kind of political inertia you're talking about, where you've got somebody who really wants to make change in the right direction, and it's hard to do it. I'll give you a radical idea if you want to hear it.
Yeah.
Here's my radical idea. My radical idea is that all these government agencies, you should eliminate, at least on the health agencies, you could probably eliminate easily 90% of all personnel in any particular department. The remaining 10% pay 4 times as much, 5 times as much, okay? So you're saving half as much money. You have a lot less people, but you're going to attract the best. And they have to agree, number one, to never work in industry that's related to what they're doing. You want to be a public servant? Be a public servant. And that will focus them on the job of working for the American people.
Yeah.
Rather than, they're not making that much. What's payday? Payday is getting that job in industry. And that's where they're focused versus focused on really, the job at hand. Incentives drive outcomes. They just do.
Totally. I'm an incentive-based guy. I believe that everybody, whether they admit it or not, responds to incentives. And we also respond to disincentives. I mean, that's why criminal law, when you actually enforce the criminal law and you prosecute cases and people get convicted, that's why it works, because it's general deterrence. People say, I don't want that. So they're disincentivized. I mean, similarly, if you did that, and I love the idea because a couple of things happen. Number one, you actually have a chance. If you did that in every department, you'd have a chance of actually one day balancing a budget that is not anywhere near balanced at the federal level. And we're going off the cliff because of that. But the second thing is, it is exactly what you say. All of a sudden, some really talented, brilliant people come to work for you, and they say, "This is where I want to be," and they do it, and they can get the job done probably much more efficiently too. And here's the thing that I want to ask you, because I want your opinion here.
Oh, sure.
Where is the constitutional authority for any of this?
Which part?
The health apparatus.
The entire sprawling federal government agencies that now is 2.8 million federal employees.
Where is that?
Oh, you don't know? Didn't Madison write that in the Federalist Papers? I mean,
have we gone too far? I guess is what I'm saying.
The whole point of the federal government is supposed to be a government of limited powers and limited responsibilities.
Exactly.
And, unfortunately, if you look back at the U.S. Supreme Court precedent, it's not done a great job, in my opinion, in giving a lot of as much teeth to the portions of it that protect our individual rights or states' rights, for example. But man, is it given a lot of teeth and a lot of and stretched to give the federal government and Congress the ability to just create a more and ever-expanding, sprawling executive branch. Like the Commerce Clause. So anything that touches interstate commerce, now Congress
how tangentially.
How tangential. Congress can now regulate nationally, where the idea was, no, those are supposed to be left to the states. That's, so I agree with you, but I'm not the U.S. Supreme Court, so I don't get the final say. It's what the Supreme Court says.
Well, just to give you an example, when I first went to Congress, I went to Mike Lee's office, and he had on a table like this, he had a stack maybe that high of papers, and then he had about a 14-foot high stack of papers that it was so tall that he had to break down, so he had 2 7-foot stacks of papers. And we were talking about the Commerce Clause, actually, because he always liked to interview people about constitutional issues. And he said to me, I asked him, I said, what is that? And he said, what do you think it is? I said, I have no idea, man. It's just weird. And he said, right there, those are the laws passed by Congress last year. That right there, those are the rules promulgated by the executive branch.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
But to be clear, when you say rules, those are treated as having the same weight and the same enforcement as the ones passed by Congress. If when they go to indict somebody criminally, civilly, when there's civil violations, when nobody goes, oh, that's a regulation by X agency versus that's a law by Congress. They're not treated that way. They're treated the same. They're given the same weight, and it's scary. And who's got the money, time, and inclination to go and influence all of these agencies to pass these in terms of regulations they pass? It's the very folks that they regulate.
I introduced a piece of legislation to count the number of federal crimes. We were told by, was it Congressional Research, that nobody knows. It's too high. They don't know. They have no idea. In other words, there's a guy who writes he does a podcast or something called like 3 felonies a day or 5 felonies, whatever it is. He says everybody in America, because of these rules and regulations, which are criminalized, as you say, everybody's committing multiple felonies every day.
You're going to scare a lot of people, but that is true. It's unfortunate because the way that many of the criminal statutes at the federal level in particular are written are so broad, it's actually difficult not to violate many of them in many situations. I kind of look at it in some ways akin to the vehicular code that a lot of states pass. They make it so basically you can get pulled over for virtually anything. And that's by design, I think, in many states, because if an officer suspects an issue, they find a way to, even though there's no probable cause, otherwise they say, oh, under the vehicular code, I can pull you over for this little thing. And then they can proceed from there. It's similarly in the federal level, unfortunately, on the criminal code. And it gives the DOJ an incredible amount of discretion to prosecute people if they want. Now, luckily they often do because everybody be in jail.
Yeah, that's right.
But that and thankfully that there's prosecutorial discretion because they typically don't exercise it. But it shouldn't be there. Those laws shouldn't be like that. But how do you constrain that? I've said this to many elected representatives. I said the job is not just passing laws, it's repealing laws, because there's a lot of passing. There's often not so much repealing. How do you fix that problem? I don't know. I mean, I think most people are. I suspect a lot of people listening to this are going to be skeptical about the idea that they are committing 3 to 5 felonies a day just by living their everyday lives. They're like, what did I do? I ate some pizza and watched a movie.
Right. Well, I mean, I think people are skeptical and don't realize just how intrusive the federal government has grown to be. I'll just tell you one quick story. I introduced a legislation pretty early when I got to Congress to eliminate one small sub-agency of a much bigger agency. And I talked to the chairman. He said, "Oh yeah, this is good. This is good. This should pass." It didn't pass. It went down, and the reason it went down is because my argument was this is duplicative. It's wasteful. You've got this sub-agency doing part of it, and this sub-agency doing the other part. Well, many of my colleagues said, "Well, what are these people going to do for work?" And I said, "Well, it's a vast country with a lot of jobs, and it's a small sub-agency, and I feel bad for them. But here's the deal: they're doing the same thing what we're doing over here, and we're spending money on it.
Right? And
but we lost that bill, and that's the norm for trying to reduce the size and scope of government, and that is part and parcel of having so many rules and regs that you have so many agencies to justify their existence. They'll do a little something here and there with the rule, and those rules, a lot of them come with criminal penalties, which I've never been able to understand how they get that authority.
Yeah. Well, Congress does have the power to fix it.
It does.
They could. I mean, that was the whole idea, is the power of the purse. But Congress never wields it. In fact, it just goes the other way. We brought it up earlier, $37 trillion in debt we're right now? 39. Thank you.
Yeah.
What's $2 trillion these days? With a $7 to $8 trillion annual budget at the moment, and we bring in $5 to $6 trillion in revenue?
Yeah, it's about a $2 trillion structural deficit every year. And with the way it's accelerating, my guess is in 7 years you have a chance to actually be north of $70 trillion in national debt. And don't forget, we've been talking COVID, but COVID era spending was about $7.5 trillion of what I call non-productive federal spending. So when you spend that $5.5 trillion, it represents hard-earned sweat and tears and taxes and fees that have come into the federal government. But when you spend that extra $2 trillion, or in this case, during COVID, extra $7 trillion, that explains, even though people don't quite get it, it devalues your currency, which is the classical definition of inflation. Your currency is devalued; you can't buy as much. That's what inflation is born of today.
Yeah,
you've got inflationary pressures or cost increase pressures because of gas and energy prices. But the vast majority of our inflation is because we still have so much money in circulation, and that's why we had so much fraud and waste and abuse.
Yeah, I think it's just hard for people to wrap their heads around that. It's just and it seems like such a problem that they can never, grapple with, but it really is existential. I mean, just one of the issues, and I know you know this already, is that a lot of the countries around the world hold their national reserves in dollars, specifically because they view it as a trusted, secure way to hold their national dollars. So you got, 150, 60, 80 countries holding it. That helps prop up the dollar. It makes our buying power stronger, so we can live the high standard of living we enjoy here in the United States vis-a-vis potentially living somewhere else. Well, if they start seeing the dollar as a risky bet in terms of holding those dollars as a national reserve currency, and obviously it's not the only issue, but it could be one of them.
Yeah.
And let's say, and some of them have started to diversify. They're holding a little bit more euro now. They're holding some of them Swiss francs. They're, some of them are even going to Bitcoins and other digital currency. If all of them, or a significant portion, very rapidly stopped using dollars, that could cause a financial, I don't want to be dramatic, but almost a financial death spiral. It'll make the housing bubble, the financial bubble, look like child's play potentially.
Yeah, the one thing that has saved us from our huge debt is we are essentially the national currency of exchange. The dollar is, and China is, and BRICS, those countries, they've actually tried to get in and pry their own countries off the dollar, but even China has been unsuccessful in doing that, and that's because it's kind of like Churchill said about the American system of government. He said it's the worst except for all the others that are worse than ours. But it's the same thing. Our dollar's not in the best condition right now. It's, but all of the other currencies around the world are really, really in bad shape. And so that's why they still rely on us. And also they look to Congress and the president and they say, these people will not let the dollar totally collapse. They will never let the dollar totally collapse.
For now. But that's a dangerous bet to get. We want to gamble the future of our country on that. That's a dangerous bet because it could change and we don't know. Well, going back to Congress, just so all of these great bills that you put forward, to end mask mandates, to end COVID vaccine requirements, to safeguard basic individual rights and freedoms at the federal level, how come they didn't go through?
The establishment special interest groups didn't want those to come through. So, you've got, we're talking whether it's mask mandates or just basically some freedom of choice.
Mm-hmm.
The special interest groups don't want that because that would actually begin to crumble their hold over Congress. I mean, the biggest lobbyists in D.C. are health care special interest groups, and they put a ton of money on both sides of the aisle. So when we were doing the right to try bill, I had done it in the state working.
And that's one that did pass.
Yeah, and it did pass.
That's one that did pass. Yep.
Yeah, but we had Representative Laura Knaprick in Arizona. She's the one who actually fostered it through, and I was the Senate president. We were able to get that bill through, and she did a great job. And then Matt Salmon before me was running the right to try, and then when he left, he says, "You got to promise me you'll keep going right to try." And so we had citizens groups, Goldwater Institute, all these citizen groups and everything working on right to try to get that through. And we had a great senator from Wisconsin, Ron Johnson. He was carrying in the Senate, and I was in the House. And then my leadership, which didn't really like I was too conservative. I won't get into that. But so the bill kind of was taken from me, but I was the shepherd of the bill. And the big pharma hated that bill. They hated that bill. And we had 80 Republicans that were going to come off that bill. And so I called Kirsten Sinema, then U.S. Representative Kirsten Sinema, who was a Democrat at the time, and I said, "We got to get right to try." And she was all over right to try. She's very supportive. And I said, "I'm losing 80 Republicans because of the big pharma issue." And I said, and the Democrat lead, I won't say which, but he had a huge pharmaceutical company, maybe a couple of them, who were headquartered in his district. And so he was the lead against the bill. And she said, "How many do you need?" I said, "We need at least 40. And she was able to come. I think we got 45, 50. Mm-hmm. But that's how we got it through. And then Ron Johnson just bullied his way through in the Senate, and we got the bill through and got it passed, signed by President Trump. And President Trump, he still will talk about that bill today and how many lives it saved. And
can you explain what right to try, what that bill allowed, and create what that created?
Yeah, the idea behind it is if someone has a fatal disease or illness, and their doctors indicate that there is no known cure or anything like that, that your mortality is at an end, and you know that there is a drug that's being in development, and it is past like step one, which is kind of safety, initial safety. You can get access to that drug and take that drug and that prescription to see that medication, see if it'll help you.
Isn't it incredible that just letting everyday Americans try a drug when they're going to die anyway to potentially save their life required you to, have to go across the aisle, have to engage in this giant battle? Like that should have been a no-brainer, shouldn't it?
100%. I was stunned, to be frank with you.
Were you though?
I was new. I was new.
This was the beginning.
Yeah, of my time in Congress.
When you first came to Congress.
Yeah, I thought people of goodwill everywhere will say we should have pity on these people, right? We should have empathy for them. We should understand.
But yeah, well, that's the problem with monopolies. And governments create monopolies. The FDA is a monopoly. I'll give you another radical idea, which if you end up agreeing with on this podcast, I hope doesn't get you in trouble. Which is that I think the FDA licensure process, keep it, have it. You want to get your drug or biologic or medical device FDA license, you should be able to do it. But if you want to sell it without that FDA licensure, you should be able to do so as well. And the public should be able to choose and say, you know what? I only want the FDA licensed med device versus somebody who could say, you know what? I'm okay with this brand. There's a lot of private brands that people learn to trust. When you go to the supermarket, there might be certain brands you trust versus others. There might be certain brands you trust in areas, right? Because they uphold a very high level of quality and so forth. And you get what you pay for in some instances. And in that way, you break the FDA's monopoly. You wouldn't need right to try. In that instance, it would be right? And it would create an actual true free market, and would also make it so that the FDA, a lot of the pressures that are on the FDA that end up resulting in it doing things that are against the public interest, cutting corners and go in both directions, right? Would be eliminated. Big pharma wouldn't have to lobby like crazy to constantly be getting, and wouldn't also the revolving door at FDA not so important anymore. So it would eliminate all of the bad pressures on the FDA, and then combine that with the reduction of force and higher salary. You actually might have an agency that really does the right thing and really does act as public servants of the public. Can I,
You're looking for an amen on that.
So if you couldn't get right to try-pass, trust me, I don't see that as having a shot.
That probably doesn't have a shot. But I've actually let's take lawyers. We're both lawyers.
Okay.
I've done kind of the same thing. What does passing a state bar do? I mean, when I passed, so I passed 3 state bars. I've taken 3 state bars. The question is, after the first one, was I any more prepared to be a lawyer than I was the day before I passed that? And the answer was probably not. Back in the day before all these bar exams came forward, you remember you spent basically your legal career was reading the law, and you apprenticed with someone at the bar. And what did your mentor do? Well, you learned how to try a case. You learned how to write a contract. You learned how to draft a will. These are the things that I think people walk out and they really don't have that necessary experience. And so I've wondered, what is the purpose of the state bar? I mean, you could still have it and say, proud member of the Arizona State Bar. Cheaper, non-bar certified, whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's
a guild.
It's a guild.
That is the purpose. The purpose is to create a monopoly, a guild that can drive higher, I think that is a big part of what it is. I don't think that there should be a monopoly. I mean, I think that it's the same model in my view. If you want to hire somebody that has passed the bar, you should do that. And if you want there are still a few states that you can become a lawyer through apprenticing. To this day,
I didn't know that.
It's in New York State. Actually, it's a holdover. It's still in the
really?
books.
Okay.
I don't know anybody that's ever done it. But I think it's like a 6-year apprenticeship. I think you have to register you still have to register with the Bar Association, I believe, and let them know you're doing it, and then meet all these requirements. But I think it's still. Last I checked, it's been a while. But I think that's the idea of a lot of these medical organizations, legal organizations. It creates a monopoly in a guild, and I don't think they should be monopolies in any of them. I don't think government should create any monopolies.
Right. So I had a law partner one time. We were talking about this, and he said, I don't understand it because Arizona was not enforcing certain areas of practice. Really, weren't going after people who were practicing law without a license in certain areas. He says. Basically this, are we not a guild? Are we, they're practicing in my area. And I had to go through all this hassle. Why are they not protecting me? So I mean, even my point is, even lawyers understand in some ways that it is a bit of a protectionist racket. And that's what that's what you're saying. And I'm not sure, Is America ready to go back to real absolute freedom? And I don't even view this as libertarianism. I don't view this as a libertarian issue at all. I view this as just simply as a market-based system.
Right. You're not saying to anybody, you can't use a lawyer that has, gotten the same, that went to law school, passed the bar, was licensed by the state. You can do that, but you should also be able to use somebody who doesn't have that if you want to, and that's your choice. You should be able to do that. Look, one of the clearest...
This is... we're going to have to cut this part out of the podcast. This is going to kill me, man. but I don't know if it'll kill me. But the point is America ready for that? Is Arizona ready for that? I'm not saying... I don't even see it getting there.
I don't think that you would... I mean, even if you were governor, I did not see as conservative as the Arizona legislature is currently on the majority side. I don't see that ever getting through. There's too many interests at play. I mean, to show that it's a guild, and here, I'll use one example. So in certain places, for example, in Florida, where a lot of lawyers retire to, or a lot of people retire to, including former lawyers in other states, you can't just wave in. No, even if you've been a lawyer for 30 years, right? You can't just wave in to the floor and become a Florida lawyer. They make you 30-year lawyer sit down and take the bar and jump through all the hoops again. Why? They're protecting the local bar. Not only that, if you're not admitted in Florida and you want to go into federal court there, you only get to do it 3 times a year. In certain in certain districts. It might be all of them. I just know the ones that I know. I believe it's 3 times a year. Okay, that's true in certain other places. Why? Why is that? Why can you only a pro hoc vice, right, get admitted for that matter? Because it's just protecting the local bar. It's just it's even a protectionist within the protectionism.
Wow.
For the Florida lawyers against all the other lawyers in the country.
It's interesting. I mean, the market, quite frankly, the country, when the Constitution was formed, and before that, with the very notion, the philosophy within the Declaration of Independence, it was to allow each individual to make choices. So we get back to where we're talking about, which is healthcare choices. But we've now, especially in I would say the post Oliver Wendell Holmes era, and right on through the FDR especially era, we have actually allowed government to come in and basically constrain virtually every choice you make. I mean, so for instance, everything's regulated. I looking around here and I see the lights that you've got here are regulated. The wall board you have here are regulated. The microphones and the components, the wiring within it, they're all regulated. The ketchup you put on a hamburger, that's regulated. What is the pickle regulated? Yes, the pickle is regulated. Sesame seed buns, regulated. How many seeds have to be on the bun to be called a sesame? We have basically said the government, with some yo-yo sitting in a cubicle in Washington, D.C., is going to regulate every aspect of your life. And, that's a pretty bold statement, but it seems to me that's what's happened here. And so we've kind of constrained the market. We're free, but not within these parameters. You're in this set of freedom and not boundless freedom.
Yeah. Some regulations have a place.
Yeah.
But when regulations are there to distort markets for the financial pecuniary gain of a certain guild, industry, company, and that it's a problem. And I say this as somebody who, can make money off of these massive regulatory regimes, right? That's what lawyers do in many respects. That's not good. That is not good for America. That's not good for anybody in this country.
What does it do to the overall economy when you think about it?
I think it creates massive market distortions that drive reduce competition overall, because what it does is, there's a lot of different effects it has, but the higher the regulations, the more regulatory, the higher the barrier to entry. The higher the barrier to entry, the less new companies can compete in that space. There's a notion that big insurance companies don't want a lot of regulation. It's not true, actually. You don't see them fighting a lot of the regulation. They fight the regulations that affect some of their bottom line, but a lot of regulations actually create so many barriers to entry. That's it. You've got the big players, and breaking in is really tough. Like breaking into the auto industry, really tough, unless you got a guy like Elon Musk who just is not a normal market actor, who kind of broke the mold, who gave away the intellectual property for his electric cars so other companies could do it. Like nobody does that, right? I mean, he just has, and he was able to create this sense of that he was going to create this incredible thing and drove market values through the roof when he was losing money for forever. Very few people can do that. So absent a tail event like that, that's what regulations often do. They constrain competition. They distort markets. and they result a lot of times in higher prices for consumers, less selection, and not always safer products.
Well, and that's what people are going to first come to you and me and say, if you want to have a free market, like in a right to try situation, they'll say, and I got this. I got this kind of argument when we were talking. They're saying, well, what about the safety and the risk to the patient? And I'm like, well, the patient has 2 doctors that have said that he or she's not going to live for much longer, 6 months to a year, whatever. They have a fatal illness, and they want to try and prolong their life, and perhaps, if they can prolong their life, have a decent enough lifestyle with people they love. What is that? So we're going to get, you and I will get these questions about if you allow people to take the regulated product and choose between an unregulated product, which ostensibly is going to get you the same result. They're going to say why won't these guys do it? It's because they're not safe. And that's the issue that we always get. I always hear that. Well, regulations make people safer.
But when you go and you buy, supplements,
do I look like I buy supplements?
Yeah. Do people look for an FDA label? No. How do they pick it? They look at the brand and they choose it based on the brand, right? And the best part, by the way, when it's not FDA regulated, is that the company can't hide behind the FDA label, which they can do often when there is an FDA label. They say, oh, the FDA approved it, it's labeled, and hence you can't sue us. Like, look what they're trying to do with glyphosate. They say, oh, if the EPA approved glyphosate. And so if it's on the label, we disclose the risk. And if it's not on the label, EPA said it's safe. That's literally the argument.
Yeah, that's right.
That Bayer's, Bayer, not Monsanto, Bayer is making the U.S. Supreme Court right now that the Solicitor General of the United States in this administration went in on the side of Bayer. As you and I sit here, the U.S. Supreme Court is going to decide that issue. And if they come down and say, that's right, you can't sue for, by the way, not just for glyphosate, any pesticide, for any harms basically on the state level. Because if it's on the label, you can't sue. And if it's not on the label, EPA found it wasn't a safety issue, right? So supplements are there. They're not killing people left and right. And if they hurt anybody, they can be held accountable. I'd rather have the supplement system than the FDA system, personally, based on just the real world experience of those two, right? I mean, so in any event, but all right, we are way deep into federal policies, but on the state level where you're not going to have to deal with these issues, the great thing is that these same ethos that you're putting forth regarding freedom, liberty, respecting individual rights really becomes super critical at the state level. And I think that, as governor, and I sure hope to see you in the governor's mansion. Is that a thing in Arizona? Is there a mansion?
No, there's no mansion.
Oh, there's no mansion? What is it? I don't even know.
My wife said, we won't have to move to the governor's mansion. I said, honey, we live in the governor's mansion. It's just the house that you live in.
Oh, it is? Oh, that's great. That's even better, actually.
Yeah,
I like that.
I would prefer that, actually.
Yeah. You don't want government housing?
No, I don't. I really don't.
So, I think those principles are even more important at the state level.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm thinking, I was just looking here. I made a note of just 2 or 3 bills that the current governor has vetoed. I mean, so one was a bill that said if you were an adult and you're going to college, University of College in Arizona, you are exempt from having to take a mandatory vaccine. She vetoed that. I mean, I'm like, wait. We allow anybody who's reached majority to make all kinds of decisions on their life.
Mm-hmm.
And why are you going to veto that? That was vetoed.
And to be clear, that wouldn't have stopped anybody from getting it if they want.
Exactly.
They can still get it. It's still available. It's still promoted. It's still free. Government pays for it typically. But yet she doesn't want to give people the choice.
Yeah, right. It's a choice issue, not any other issue. parental notification, school immunization. So this is a bill that basically said before you can actually immunize a kid, the school has to just notify the parent what the immunizations are, and that there is, if you have an exemption for a religious or personal exemption, the kid doesn't have to take you just have to just provide notice. This was just merely a notice.
You're talking about like middle, elementary, high schools?
Yeah, we're talking about
like having an in-school vaccination program?
Well, not an in-school vaccination program, but we require kids to be vaccinated, right?
Right, to attend school.
Right. And so what this was just saying, you have to notify parents.
I'm so sorry. That there is the option to obtain an exemption if you want it. That's it.
That's it.
And
to make the choice.
And she vetoed it.
She vetoed that.
She vetoed it, informing them of an existing exemption and that they could obtain.
Yeah, and we're not. And again, we're not even creating new exemptions here.
Yeah,
we're taking current exemptions, just saying you may not know this.
Yeah, because a lot of times, not only will they not be told, they'll be told that there are no exemptions when that's not true.
Right. Yeah,
that happens.
That's right.
That happens frequently. And when folks contact us about that, we say, "Here's the form. Just fill it out and send it."
Yeah. Well, and then this is one I do think this is interesting because she vetoed this one. This was a no soda pop paid for by government. The SNAP no soda bill.
She vetoed that.
Yeah, she vetoed that.
Just a SNAP is the federal government. It's like the for folks who can't afford basic food stamps.
Yeah.
And so she vetoed banning people being able to use food stamps to get sodas.
Right. Yeah.
They would still be able to get healthier choices.
Oh yeah. I mean, it doesn't reduce the value of your food stamps.
Why would you veto that?
Well, because I don't know why.
Oh, I get it. You have choice to take that risk when it's soda, but you can't have the choice to take this risk. And in fact, you must take the risk of taking the vaccine.
Exactly.
It's the logic here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all three of those to me, they reflect an authoritarian bent that I find personally. When I look at you start talking to my friends across the aisle, there's almost always this kind of undercurrent of authoritarianism, and elitism. Quite frankly, it's like, people don't study this stuff like you do, Andy, or people don't study it. They don't hear the same stuff we do. And I always say, but they could. They could choose to be informed.
What about the criticism that somebody would say to you? Okay, but if you're for freedom of choice, why won't you let the person who's getting the SNAP, the food stamp, choose anything they want?
Well, because I think the argument is because that money is compulsorily collected. In other words, I have to pay taxes. It's by compulsion. And then by compulsion, it moves over here to the recipient. Mm-hmm. And now you're saying, I've been compelled, the state's compelled by feds, and now we're going to actually allow you to have a choice to choose a product that might be bad, unhealthful. The problem is almost a direct correlation between the SNAP program is Medicaid program. And the Medicaid program is an incredibly expensive program for health care. And so if you're making a personal choice with your personal money and your personal funds, and you're bearing the brunt of your personal choice for health care, drink soda pop, eat, cookies and whatever all day long. That's your choice. But when you're saying we're going to take and basically confiscate, which is what taxation is, you're confiscating this.
Couldn't agree more.
We're going to confiscate this from you, and we're going to transfer this over here, and there's no accountability on either what they choose to spend it on or if there's any potential healthcare ramifications, because we're going to still take that same money that we confiscate a little bit more to pay for their health care. That doesn't seem fair to me. And it just doesn't seem right.
Right, because you're saying that, it's government dollars taken from folks, and the whole idea is to help folks out in this one area. But if they're making unhealthy, if they're able to make extremely healthy food choices, it increases even more costs on the Medicaid side.
Correct.
Because it drives. Is there actually good data on that folks who are on SNAP also have far higher Medicaid costs?
I don't know about. I don't know if there's data saying
That'd be
that they have
interesting to
far
see.
higher. I don't know if it says they're far higher.
Oh, but they're more likely to be on Medicaid.
I think that there's data probably, and I can't point to it right now, but I would suspect that there's data that says there is a correlation, certainly.
And this reflects the importance of the food pyramid change, because changing it to be healthier foods, which then downstream reflects what the SNAP program should be focused on and what you should be able to get. It does, it's unfortunate because that there's any nanny state in this whole arena at all. Like, it would be ideal. I think back, if you go back, I don't know how many years, but a good number of years, there were publicly funded, not government funded, but soup kitchens and other, churches, religious institutions, community institutions would feed those in need. And that also had a benefit of those folks then looking to that community versus looking to the government. It's far better to be part of look to your church community, because that comes with a lot more than just the food once you get involved in that community, or looking to, some other community. It's unfortunate because once you start looking to the government for one thing, it's not a good road to go down.
No, two points to that. Number one, we still do have food banks and providers in the Valley that provide lunches and meals and stuff like that on a regular basis, and food boxes. But the second thing is, and this is really what I think it all gets to, is if you create a dependency on government, when government right now is, in my opinion, on an unsustainable path federally, and by the way, Aaron, states have bought into the dependency on the feds too. So, we get match rate of 3-1 here, so we're going to expand our program, et cetera, whatever it may be. What are you going to do when the feds do either decide they can't pay that, or they reduce the match rate, or they allow the currency to be devalued so they can pay you in cheaper dollars, and you are dependent upon them, and you've created a constituency that clamors for this, and you have to respond to that constituency. What do you do? And we just keep building this up, and the cycle is rough, because when people get involved in that cycle, it's hard to get out of that cycle, and I think it hinders their ability to become, the great person that I think they could be. I mean, I'm not saying they're not great people. I'm just saying the opportunities kind of get foreclosed a little bit, perhaps, and I don't want that. I mean, the idea originally for SNAP was we want people to be on temporarily, and we want them to be able to get back on their feet and take advantage of opportunities in our economy and our society. That's what we want. We want that.
It's incentives drive outcomes, and if you incentivize certain behavior, you're going to get that outcome. I had somebody who applied to my law firm, and it was during the height of COVID, where the government was doing those like monthly paying people every month. Remember, if they didn't have a job,
right.
And gave him a great job offer. Turned it down. I was so surprised he turned it down, because it was like, didn't have a job. Here's an opportunity. And had my firm administrator follow up, and turned it down because he said at the moment he can get about half as much we were going to pay him. So he would have made double if he came to work from the government for the next 6 to 12 months or something. And he was like, I'll look for a job then. I was like, wow, there it is, right in action in the real world. Where he could have been a productive person with a law degree, went to law school. I mean, he was a lawyer. And instead he decided to sit around and, live on the government dole for, it's really unfortunate.
Interesting.
So, what would be, so folks out there know, what would be your priorities as governor so people can get a more rounded understanding of what you would plan to do as governor? And I think they got a good sense of your appreciation, respect for freedom, which is why I support you.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there are folks out there with broader issues and probably would love to know what is it that your priorities are.
Well, so here's some things that we're not doing so well on in our state right now that we used to be typically in the top 5 in job creation and real wage growth. We're not. We're in the bottom 5 now. We used to be one of the most affordable states in the country. We're not. We're now I think number 45 or something in affordability. These things happened in about 3 years' time since this governor came to office. Before that, we were in pretty good shape. And that isn't because we're in a national milieu that's driving that. That's because of certain policies that this governor has done. And that includes things like we're not going to build any more single family homes, basically. As you put moratoriums in places to build homes. When you don't have single family homes, the young people can't afford to buy a single family home, and they forestall family formation, and family formation is important for a society a free society like ours. I mean, that's critical. So we want to make sure that we can bring down the cost of home building and cost of homes. And right now, this governor has no interest in it. I mean, her solution has been to subsidize maybe 500 people to get into a home. That's not the long-term answer. The long-term answer is to create and foster an environment so you can actually build homes, you can actually afford to live in this state again, and you can create jobs so you where you possibly can. You reduce the tax burden, you reduce the regulatory burden we've been talking about. Entrepreneurs can come in here. The creators that have always been so important in Arizona. That's why we have, we've got Intel, we've got TSMC, these big companies. We've got a place in my district called Hadrian that's taken robotics and the use of critical minerals to an incredible high. And you start allowing those people to grow their businesses here. Guess what? Small entrepreneurs can succeed, and their economy gets better, their microeconomy gets better because our macroeconomy is better. And that's really important. The other thing is we still have a lot of crime and human trafficking in this state. And not very much prosecution for some of these people that are committing crimes that actually impact the safety of our women and children, for instance. I mean, there's a lot of trafficking going on. Well, we've got to bring that to a close, and we've got to make sure that the resources go there to actually enforce the law. We have places, Aaron, in some of our facilities, you've got a facility, 2 facilities that I've been to in various parts of northern Arizona. If someone is arrested for a crime, they can't put them in a holding cell and have them wait there for arraignment and release, etc. They're using bicycle chains on a bench. It's just sitting right there.
Are you serious?
I was a heart attack. Yeah. I'm very serious. Yeah. We've got a problem with some of our resources there. The other thing is everybody gets concerned about water. All these other things we talk about, but if you don't take care of your water problem, a lot of these other things don't matter, right? Okay. So the governor, this particular governor knew for 5 years, because that's how long it was passed for in Congress, that we would be renegotiating our water agreement with the upper basin states on the Colorado River. And we're at Stasis right now. We're at loggerheads, and we're probably going to end up in litigation. And litigation is not good because it'll last 10, 12 years. And it seems to me we've got a lot of underground water. We've got a lot of recharge water. We can actually, using some resources that we have, build the infrastructure to make sure that we have water now and in the future for literally hundreds of years in the future. That just takes leadership, management, willingness to work these things through. talking about power. People talk about data processing centers chewing up power. And the demand is really high to do a lot of these data processing centers. And I've talked to the data processing center people, and I said, no more subsidies for you, no more tax breaks for you. You have to be treated just like everybody else, and you can't squeeze out our owners, right? Our current users, like residential users, commercial users. You can't squeeze them out. And so APS is getting on the board on some of this, and so are some of the other companies. But the demand is still really high. Well, we need to make sure that Arizona's on the cutting edge of the development of SMRs, right? SMR is the cleanest technology coming for energy. These are the things that I think ultimately give us a good economy, but they also give us safety and security. Last thing I'll say, and I think this is really important to say, because I want to restore the American dream to Arizona. But part of that means that we have to be ready and prepared, food security, economically, and safety, and overall state safety wise, for the moment when the federal government is not really fully capable of taking care of its obligations. And you see some of that, and it scares me, is when you have bond auctions come up and there is something hinky with the bond auction where you're not getting the number of buyers that you want to come in and buy U.S. bonds. I mean, that's how we fund our government right now.
Right.
So that's kind of a broader sense, and I mean I could go on and specifically about very, very different areas of where we're going, but it's important to understand that we can actually fix this, and we will fix it, and we can actually turn a lot of this stuff around very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, all of those issues, especially in Arizona, are really important. And a lot of the folks who I think listen to this show are really obviously medical liberty is hugely important. And on that front, you have not only shown in words that you are supportive, you have shown it indeed in action over the years, proposing bills when it probably was not very popular to do so. And so, that's great. Now, most folks can learn more about you at Biggs4Arizona.com. That's also they can donate for your campaign for governor. I'll end with one last thing, which is there's currently a potential for a constitutional amendment in Arizona that would enshrine medical liberty, not just for vaccines, but for all medical choices, into the Arizona state constitution, which that would be a first. It would be the only first state that has that. It passed the House. I believe it's gone through the Senate, and then it would become a referendum. That is now wouldn't end up on the governor's desk, and the reason for that at the moment is that is the governor would never sign it. But if with the right governor in place, that could get into law without even a referendum. So that's another amazing potential outcome if you were sitting in your own home. Not the governor's mansion, your own home as governor. And if that came across your desk, that constitutional amendment, would you sign it?
Yeah. Yes, I would. I mean, and I say that not having read the specifics. I mean, obviously you want it to be just right, be well appointed, and et cetera. But the very idea of it is the heart of what freedom is. And can you imagine what that would mean throughout the entire country?
Yeah, that's right.
It would really set the standard. And I really want to get Arizona back to be the standard economically and on freedom issues. And if we do that, we're already poised in so many places, ready to go. Mm-hmm. We just need a little catalyst.
Yeah. And for everybody who's in Arizona who came from someplace else you didn't like, just remember why you didn't like it, okay? Remember why you didn't like it. Think about that. All right. So if you want to support Congressman Biggs, please go to Biggs4Arizona.com. And thank you for joining today.
Thanks for having me, Aaron. Thanks for all you're doing, too. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.